Galton did not, however, completely overlook the effect of the environment, and it was he who first referred to the nature-nurture dichotomy, possibly in reference to Shakespeare's irredeemable villain Caliban. A devil, a born devil, on whose nature-nurture can never stick. The results of his analysis, however, left no doubt in Galton's mind. I have no patience with the hypothesis occasionally expressed and often implied, especially in tales written to teach children to be good, that babies are born pretty much alike, and that the sole agencies in creating differences between boy and man are steady application and moral effort. It is in the most unqualified manner that I object to pretensions of natural equality. A corollary of his conviction that these traits are genetically determined, he argued, was that it would be possible to improve the human stock by preferentially breeding gifted individuals and preventing the less gifted from reproducing. It's easy to obtain by careful selection a permanent breed of dogs or horses gifted with peculiar powers of running or of doing anything else. So it would be quite practicable to produce a highly gifted race of men by judicious marriages during several consecutive generations. Galton introduced the terms eugenics, literally good in birth, to describe this application of the basic principle of agricultural breeding to humans. In time, eugenics came to refer to self-directed human evolution. By making conscious choices about who should have children, eugenicists believed that they could head off the eugenic crisis precipitated in the Victorian imagination by the high rates of reproduction of inferior stock, coupled with the typically small families of the superior middle classes. Eugenics these days is a dirty word associated with racists and Nazis, a dark, best-forgotten phase of the history of genetics. It is important to appreciate, however, that in the closing years of the 19th and early years of the 20th centuries, eugenics was not tainted in this way and was seen by many as offering genuine potential for improving not just society as a whole, but the lot of individuals within society as well. Eugenics was embraced with particular enthusiasm by those who today would be termed the liberal left. Fabian socialists, some of the era's most progressive thinkers, flocked to the cause, including George Bernard Shaw, who wrote that there is now no reasonable excuse for refusing to face the fact that nothing but a eugenic religion can save our civilization. Eugenics seemed to offer a solution to one of society's most persistent woes, that segment of the population that is incapable of existing outside an institution. Whereas Galton had preached what came to be known as positive eugenics, encouraging genetically superior people to have children, the American eugenics movement preferred to focus on negative eugenics, preventing genetically inferior people from doing so. The goals of each program were basically the same, the improvement of the human genetic stock. But these two approaches were very different. The American focus on getting rid of bad genes as opposed to increasing frequencies of good ones stemmed from a few influential family studies of degeneration and feeble-mindedness, two peculiar terms characteristic of the American obsession with genetic decline. In 1875, Richard Dugdale published his account of the Juke clan of upstate New York. Here, according to Dugdale, were several generations of seriously bad apples, murderers, alcoholics, and rapists. Apparently, in the area near their home in New York State, the very name, Juke, was a term of reproach. Another highly influential study was published in 1912 by Henry Goddard, the psychologist who gave us the word moron, on what he called the Kallikak family. Now, this is the story of two family lines originating from a single male ancestor who had a child out of wedlock with a feeble-minded wench he met in a tavern while serving in the military during the American Revolutionary War, as well as siring a legitimate family. The illegitimate side of the Kallikak line, according to Goddard, was bad news indeed. A race of defective degenerates, while the legitimate side comprised respectable, upstanding members of the community. To Goddard, this natural experiment in heredity was an exemplary tale of good genes versus bad. This view was reflected in the fictitious name he chose for the family. Kallikak is a hybrid of two Greek words, kalos, beautiful, of good repute, and kakos, bad. Rigorous new methods for testing mental performance, the first IQ tests, which were introduced to the United States from Europe by the same Henry Goddard, seemed to confirm the general impression that the human species was gaining downward momentum on a genetic slippery slope. In those early days of IQ testing, it was thought that high intelligence and an alert mind inevitably implied a capacity to absorb large quantities of information. Thus, how much you knew was considered a sort of index of your IQ. Following this line of reasoning, early IQ tests included lots of general knowledge questions. Here are a few from a standard test administered to U.S. Army recruits during World War I. Pick one of four. The Wyandotte is a kind of number 1, horse, number 2, fowl, number 3, cattle, 4, granite. The ampere is used in measuring number 1, wind power, 2, electricity, 3, water power, 4, rainfall. The number of a Zulu's legs is number 1, 2, number 2, 4, number 3, 6, number 4, 8. The answers are 2, 2, 1. Fowl, electricity, 2. Some half of the nation's Army recruits flunked the test and were deemed feeble-minded. These results galvanized the eugenics movement in the United States. It seemed to concerned Americans that the gene pool really was becoming more and more awash in low-intelligence genes. Scientists realized that eugenic policies required some understanding of the genetics underlying characteristics, like feeble-mindedness. With the rediscovery of Mendel's work, it seemed that this might actually be possible. The lead in this endeavor was taken on Long Island by one of my predecessors as director of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. His name was Charles Davenport. In 1910, with funding from a railroad heiress, Davenport established the Eugenics Record Office at Cold Spring Harbor. Its mission was to collect basic information, pedigrees, on the genetics of traits ranging from epilepsy to criminality. It became the nerve center of the American eugenics movement. Cold Spring Harbor's mission was much the same then as it is now. Today, we strive to be at the forefront of genetic research, and Davenport had no less lofty aspirations. But in those days, the forefront was eugenics. However, there is no doubt that the research program initiated by Davenport was deeply flawed from the outset and had horrendous, albeit unintended, consequences.